This is a video tutorial on how to build a wallet. You can see that this wallet has a bit of a top stitch, has a nice liner. On the inside is a spot to put your cash, and here are a couple of pockets to put different types of cards. So the first thing we need to do is work with the pattern. This pattern has two pieces. The smaller piece is 8.5 inches by 4 inches. You would have to cut one of an outside fabric, two of a lining fabric, and one of interfacing, which is a fabric, thin fabric that will thicken your wallet. It looks like this. This particular interfacing has dots on the inside so that if you press them or iron them with heat, it will stick onto the fabric that will be the outside of your wallet. The other pattern piece that you will need is a 10.5 inch by 8.5 inch rectangle that will become the lining fabric that is the inside part of your wallet that folds up to hold all the cards. So you would probably choose a liner that is going to match in this fabric with the two pieces of the smaller rectangle that would become the inside of the wallet. So that makes 1, 2, 3 liner pieces. 1, 2 in lining here, 3 in lining here. You have one outside wallet piece cut in the small rectangle, and you have one piece to match it in this interfacing. When it's time for layout and cutting, there are a couple of important things to remember. One is it's always a good idea to mark on the wrong side of your fabric. So let's say that this heavy canvas was going to be the outside of my wallet. This is the side that has the pattern on it. This side does not. Therefore, this is what we would call the wrong side of the fabric. That means I need to fold this over so that it's laying right side down, wrong side up. I also want to make sure that my pattern piece is right off to the corner so I don't waste any fabric. I need to make sure that the print, if it has a direction to it, I want my pattern piece facing so that if I look at my wallet this way and the pattern is like this, I'm going to make sure it's facing like this. This pattern appears to look better going in this direction, so I'm going to lay that out in that direction, right off to the corner. There's an important name here, grain line. That's the direction that the threads are running in this woven fabric. So I do not want to lay out my pattern piece on an angle from that grain line. I need to make sure that I'm seeing the natural line of those threads and laying my pattern either parallel or perpendicular to those lines. Once your pattern is laid out, it's important to chalk the edges. You need to put pressure down on the pattern while you're also running chalk right along that line. These patterns assume that the chalked line will become your sewing line. So when you go to cut, you need to cut with seam allowance beyond the chalked line. This pattern has been chalked. When I remove it from the fabric, the chalk line remains. So now we need to take our shears and we need to cut beyond the chalk line. This is a small amount of seam allowance. I don't want it to be any narrower than that and that, so I would continue cutting with that same narrow bit of seam allowance on those two sides. Now here are the pattern pieces all cut out. Just for fun and because it was available, there's one piece of liner fabric that is a different color than the others. That's completely your choice. That would be a design decision. This is the liner piece that will be pressed into the card holding pockets. This will become the inside, and this will be the outer wallet piece with the interfacing that has been fused on. Once you've cut out your interfacing, you can press it right down to the fabric and it will glue on. Be careful that if you are using a fusible interfacing, because some interfacings do not have the little rubber dots that melt into the fabric. If you are not using that, you would actually have to baste stitch your interfacing down. With the fusible interfacing, it's just really important to make sure that the fusible dots are on the inside. If you put the fusible dots on this facing side, then the iron will press onto them and will stick onto the interfacing itself, which makes a big mess. Okay, so once you've fused that, the interfacing is just going to be attached, and what happens with interfacing is that now this outer wallet piece is much stiffer, and it has it holds its own shape. The next bit of pressing or ironing that you need to do is this piece here, which is rather confusing. So there's a piece that has been created here as a template that will show you the dimensions necessary. What we have here is this piece measured down. From the top, you're measuring down 3 inches. This one is, because it's a template, I've used ink and have created dotted lines. For yourself, you don't really want to put ink on your good copy, so you would probably use chalk, and you would chalk off 3 inches down. Then from this line, you need to measure down another 1.5 inches, where you would put a chalk line. From there, you come down another 2 inches and create a chalk line, down another 1.5 inches. So your first fold will look like this. Coming down 3 inches to that first chalked corner, you're going to fold it up and make sure that this edge is nice and straight. Okay? You don't want it to be pressing it on an angle like that at all, or your pockets will all be crooked. So you'll fold it up, get it nice and straight, and then you take your iron and you press along this line. From that point, I measure up to my next little chalked corner, and I fold down, okay, so that this length up here, even though you see 2 inches here, it's actually 1.5 inches there. Okay, so that I'm going to fold that down so that this length inside here is 1.5 inches. Then I go down to that 2-inch piece, fold up at the 2 inches, and press. I fold down so that from that fold to this edge is 1.5 inches. Okay, and I press again. So hopefully when you're done, your pattern piece is roughly the size of your outer wallet piece. Okay? This one is a little tiny bit longer on either side, which is a good thing. So I now have my wallet piece folded in that accordion shape, so that there's a pocket here, there's a pocket here, right? And then the greatest part of extra length is going to be on that top side. I would then fold this in half so that I know my halfway point. Using my iron, okay, I would press that piece so that I see where my center seam is. It's going to help me when I take this to the to the sewing machine. When I open that back up again, I now have it marked along my halfway point. See that? Right along there, there's a press line. I'm now going over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew a top stitched seam on either side of that pressed line. And it's going to end up looking like this demo piece right here. So that I have a top stitch on this side and on this side. This is the inside liner piece. This is the inside liner piece being stitched together. It's really hard for you to see that pressed line at this stage, but if you just follow along where the press line is, I've got it lined up with the center of this tongue of the presser foot. So I am toe, I suppose, of the presser foot.